Hey gang, and welcome back. These videos are brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your unused collection fast and easily. 401 Games, Canada's top shop for all your hobby and TCG needs. Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest decks. And Moxfield, the easiest way to store and share your deck lists. Morgan wins the die roll and starts us off, but Amara has a pre-game action and gets to put a Leyline of Transformation into play. She names Octopus, and Morgan then moves to his turn. He draws, and plays a tap Sunken Hollow. I've got a tap land as well with a Temple of Silence, scrying one, and then passing. Benoit draws her turn, plays a Flooded Strand, and sacrifices it, losing one, to find a Glacial Floodplain. Amara draws, plays a Darkslick Shores, and then casts Ponder. She passes after she resolves the spell. Morgan's turn has him playing a Plaza of Heroes, and then paying 2 for Talisman of Dominance. I draw, play a Swamp, and cast my own Talisman, and pass after it resolves. Benoit draws and plays a Port Town, revealing a basic so it comes in untapped. And he then casts a Welding Jar. He follows up with a Spellskite, and passes turn. Amara just plays a Command Tower and casts her own Mana Rock with an Arcane Signet. Morgan draws, plays an Island, and passes. I play a Swamp for turn, and then pay 2 mana for SRAM. Benoit plays a Plains for his turn, and then transmutes Tolaria West. This gets him an Urza's Saga to hand, and he then casts a Tormod Script, and passes. Amara's turn has her playing an Underground River, and then paying 2 for a Dimir Signet. She passes, and during her end step, Morgan flashes out a Notion Thief. Morgan draws, plays an Island, and casts one of my favorite mill cards with a Consuming Aberration. Going to combat, he then hits Amara for 3 with the Notion Thief, and passes turn. I just draw, play a Plains, and cast an Auric Loremage, and hope it'll survive until my next turn. Benoit's turn has him playing that Urza's Saga that we saw him tutor for, and he then casts a Symmetry Matrix. He passes after that resolves. Amara plays an Island, and then brings out Marvo. She then casts a Combat Research, and enchants it onto Marvo, but Benoit activates the Spellskite's ability to steal the target and redirects it to Spellskite. After that, Amara passes. Morgan's turn has him drawing, playing an Island, and then casting his commander with the Scarab God. This has the Consuming Aberration triggering, and each opponent has to mill until they hit a land. The Scarab God then enters, and Morgan passes turn. I draw and continue to set up, playing a Smelting Vat and passing. Benoit's turn has him drawing, and in his main phase upticking Urza's Saga. He then plays a Terrain Generator, and then casts an Illusionist Bracers. He passes to Amara after that. Amara draws, plays an Island, and casts Sapphire Medallion. She then goes to combat and swings Marvo at Benoit. The attack trigger has them clashing, and Amara reveals Aminatu's Augury, beating Benoit in the clash. This allows her to cast a Myojin of Cryptic Dreams for free. Benoit then blocks the Spellskite, and Amara then passes turn. Morgan draws, and plays a Cephalid Colosseum, and then casts a Demonic Tutor. This has the Aberration milling us until we hit a land, and Morgan then plays a Training Grounds. Going to combat, Morgan then swings a massive Aberration at Benoit, who blocks the Spellskite, and regenerates it by sacrificing the Welding Jar. After that, Morgan passes, and during his end step, I activate Auric Loremage, going into my library and putting to graveyard a Reaver Titan. But unfortunately, Benoit remembers his Tormod's Crypt and activates it to sacrifice the Crypt and exile my graveyard before we move to my turn. I've got a Ghost Quarter for my land drop, and then activate the Auric Loremage again, this time finding and binning a Parhelion II. I then cast Greasefang, and moving to combat, Parhelion comes into play. I then crew up the Parhelion with Greasefang, and swing it at Benoit, with the angels coming in, swinging at Morgan. They each then take their damage, and after combat, I activate the smelting vat to sacrifice Parhelion. I reveal my top 8 and get a Scorpic Lord and a Peace Walker Colossus. I then pass, and during my end step, Benoit activates Urza's Saga to make a construct token. Benoit draws and activates the Urza Saga before the last chapter, making another construct token, and then sacrificing it and going to find a Python Needle and naming the Scarab God. Benoit then plays an island for turn, and he casts Tameshi, and then goes to combat. He swings the construct at Morgan, who chump blocks the Notion Thief, and the thief gets taken out. Benoit then passes to Amara. Amara's turn has her playing a swamp, and she swings Marvo at Morgan this time. They clash, with both of them hitting a land, and Morgan then just moves to block with the Scarab God. After that, Amara passes, and during her end step, Morgan casts Resculpt and targets the Python Needle. Benoit pays 2 life to redirect it to the Spellskite though, and the Spellskite gets exiled instead, and we move to Morgan's turn. Morgan just draws, plays a swamp, and passes. My turn has me drawing, and in my main phase, I activate the Lore Mage, going to find a Nautiloid ship and put it into graveyard. I then go to combat, and I bring it back with Greasefang's ability, and as it enters, I exile Benoit's graveyard. I then tap Greasefang to crew it up, and I swing it at Morgan. Morgan takes the hit for 6, and I get to put a Phyrexian Revoker into play off the ship trigger, and as it comes in, I name Scarab God as well. After combat, I then activate the Smelting Vat, and sacrifice the Nautiloid ship, but only get to keep an Orzhov Signet. I then pass turn. Benoit draws, playing a Mystic Gate as his land for turn, and then pays 2 to cycle an irrigated farmland. He then plays a Mox Amber, and equips Tameshi with Illusionist Bracers, and ships the turn to Amara. Amara draws and plays Rivendell, and then goes to combat, and she swings Marvo Morgan's way. She reveals a Thought Vessel, and he reveals a Mesmeric Orb, so unfortunately she loses the clash. The commanders then bounce off each other, and Amara then passes. During her end step, Morgan overloads a Cyclonic Rift, and bounces our boards back to our hand. Morgan draws and goes to combat, swinging the Aberration and Scarab God at Benoit to take him out, because he's afraid of the Python Needle. In his second main phase, he then activates the Scarab God, bringing back Cryptghast from Amara's graveyard. He then plays a Mesmeric Orb and passes to me. I mill 5 from the orb, and then draw for turn. I play a swamp, and cast Talisman of Hierarchy, and then recast Greasefang. Going to combat, I get the Parhelion back with Greasefang, and with the ability on the stack, Morgan responds by activating the Scarab God and getting Violent Tumor back with its ability. With it coming in, he gets to go and find a Sphinx of the Second Sun and put it to his graveyard. I then crew up the Parhelion with Greasefang, and send it and the 2 angels it makes at Morgan, and he takes a total of 13. I then play an Orzhov Signet, and sadly have to bounce the Parhelion to my hand, before then discarding it down to hand size as I pass turn. Amara mills from the orb, then draws for turn, and plays a land. She recasts her Arcane Signet, and then Demir's Signet, and then Sapphire Medallion. She then passes, and Morgan uses the Scarab God to eternalize the Sphinx of the Second Sun, and then the Notion Thief, and he moves to his turn. Morgan mills the cards for the orb as he untaps, and then gets to scry 4 and drain us for 4 with the Scarab God's ability on his upkeep. He then draws for turn, and plays a swamp, and then casts a Plaguecrafter. This is Amara discarding, and I sacrifice an angel token. Morgan then eternalizes Sidisi, which as it comes in, exploits the Violent Tumor, and he goes to tutor for a card. He then casts an Accursed Marauder, which in turn takes out my Greasefang, and then he eternalizes the Plaguecrafter and gets rid of my last blocker. Going to combat, Morgan swings the Aberration at me, and the rest go at Amara. I get taken out from the massive Aberration, while Amara takes 17. Morgan then gets his Sphinx trigger, which has him untapping and milling some cards, and then gaining another upkeep. With this Scarab God trigger on the stack, he uses the Scarab God to eternalize Noxious Ghoul and Grey Merchant of Asphodel, which between the Scarab God's ability and the Grey Merchant is able to drain out Amara for the win. Game review time. So this game was on the shorter side, just under an hour, and it's probably one of the few examples where I'm okay with the Cyclonic Rift being overloaded and resolving. In this case, Morgan used it on the offense, and he was able to take out Benoit and promptly take out me and Amara afterwards. At least this is my preferred way that Rift gets resolved, as opposed to people using it defensively and trying to stall out the game despite having no way to forward the game after it resolving. Other than that, I think the best card this game was probably that Sphinx of the Second Sun, as it allowed Morgan to get all those extra triggers later on in the game, which certainly pushed him to win the game. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.